It's projection season. Even with the lockout currently going on, the ZiPS projections for the 2022 season are out. And on today's podcast, we're going to take a look at those projections, play some over and under games with those projections for the Atlanta Braves, look at the team projections as well for their win total. So we're doing all that on today's podcast. Should be a lot of fun. Love diving into projections, always a fun part of the season. So with that, let's get into it.
Hey, this is Stacey Gotsoulias,
DC Lundberg,
Ryan Finkelstein,
Taylor Blake Ward,
host of Locked On Yankees,
Locked On Mariners,
Locked On Mets,
Locked On Angels,
and you're listening to Locked On Braves.
Locked On Braves,
Locked On Braves,
part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, where we talk about your favorite teams every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall. Check out my bio there to see where I am covering the game of baseball, including the Atlanta Braves over at TomahawkTake.com, as well as AA South for Prospects 1500, and the Birmingham Barons for Southside Sox, also covering college baseball as well, which is only 2 weeks away. I'm very excited about that. Also, make sure you follow the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves so you can be part of the podcast, sending me in your questions and thoughts on the podcast as well to include those in the show. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as well. Appreciate all the comments there on the videos. Make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen each and every day. Right now, posting episodes 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday during the offseason, and as long as this lockout goes on. So still got plenty of coverage for you, plenty of podcasts to listen to on your Atlanta Braves. Before we get into today's episode, I want to remind you that this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So on today's podcast, we are going to be looking at the ZiPS projections over there on Fangraphs done by Dan Szymborski. So we're going to be taking a look at those projections. I want to play some over and under games with some of those totals, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. So let me know in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or hit me up on Twitter as well. Let me know your over-unders for some of these that we're going to go through here, whether or not you think these players will be over under on these totals. So should be a fun podcast. Love talking about projections. It's kind of hard right now during the lockout, as there's still obviously plenty of work left to be done this offseason, particularly for the Braves, who at least should have one more big move left to make before the season starts. What would that be? Freddie Freeman or somebody else, or hopefully Freddie Freeman and somebody else. So there's still obviously a lot to be decided this offseason, but while we all are stuck in this lockout, it's fun to look at some of these projections. Again, always a fun time of the season to talk about these projected numbers. And ZiPS is a very recognized projection system, again, done by Dan over there at Fangraphs. So going to go through some of those today and look at a particular stat for some Braves players, and I'll tell you whether or not I think they're going to go over or under on these totals. And the first one is Ronald Acuna Jr., who ZiPS projects to have 35 home runs this coming up season. And they project him to do that in 466 at bats. So, obviously Acuna could be delayed to start the season. I know I'm hopeful. I know a lot of Braves fans are hopeful that he'll be ready to go day one, whenever that may be. But they have him getting 466 at bats, but hitting 35 home runs in those 466 at bats. They also have him stealing 20 bases along with that. I have a feeling he may not run quite as much this year, which is a bummer for me. I definitely wanted to see him get that 40-40 season. Hopefully he will. I don't know. Again, that's Acuna right now is kind of just an unknown. We don't know exactly how he's going to bounce back. I tend to believe he's still going to be, one of the best players in baseball, but we're going to need to see it. Obviously, he's going to have to prove that on the field to us first. But when I saw that 35 home run total, that really popped out to me. I thought that was a very high amount, especially in the number of at-bats that they project him to get. That's a home run about every 13.3 at-bats, which honestly is not really far off his career pace, where he's at 14, a home run every 14.4 at bat. So that's not too outlandish as maybe I previously thought, just seeing that 35 home run total. I think the Braves get that from him this year. I would be ecstatic to see that. And I certainly think he's capable of doing that. But I'm going to take the under here, and not by much. I think he hits between 30 and 35 home runs, but it's hard to tell again how much he's actually going to play. Will he be ready to go from the beginning? That's something, really that hurts us in this lockout, is just the team doctors aren't able to get an eye on him and Morton and Soroka and others to just really evaluate their progress and see about getting them ready for opening day. I have a feeling the Braves will hold back with him a little bit, and maybe he won't play the first month. So I think that will hold him back. If he gets 500 at bats, I think he easily hits 35 to 40 home runs, but I have a feeling it's more around 450 at bats. I think he's somewhere between 30 and 35 home runs. So I'm going to take the under there, and I'm not going to be shocked when Acuna goes over that 35 home run total. This, to me, the next one here with Ozzie Albies is one to me that if he hits this projection, watch out, because my main issue with Ozzie Albies is just that he does not get on base enough, and that's why I can't stand it whenever Snicker puts him at the top of the order. That's not where he should be. He needs to be hitting fifth or sixth like he was in that World Series clinching game. He had an on-base percentage the last 2 years of 306 and 310. That is not great. The ZiPS projections has him with a on-base percentage of 330. And if Ozzie gets his on-base percentage to 330, really, if he just has better at bats, and I get it, it's his game to go up there swinging, hunting a pitch, and going for it. I don't want to change that about him because it clearly works for him. He's an all-star level second baseman, one of the top 5, definitely top 10. I can't believe there's people out there that don't have him top 10 second baseman in baseball, but he's one of the best second basemen in the game for sure. But I would like to see him change up his approach a little bit every now and then, especially when he's struggling, and get on base a little bit more. If he gets his on-base percentage to 330, as they're projecting, Ozzie Albies is going to have a monster year, in my opinion. But I'm going to take the under on here as well, just because, again, it's been at 306 and 310 the last 2 years. But I'm hopeful for this one. I hope ZiPS is dead on with this one, because if Ozzie gets his on-base percentage up to 330, like I said, I think he's going to end for a big season. So I'm going to go under on that one as well. Next up is Austin Riley. They project him with 3-point WAR according to Fangraphs. And I know WAR can be a little bit different depending on which site you go to, but they project him for 3.1 WAR. And that's after him coming off a 4.2 WAR season. Now, I talked about Austin Riley last Monday and, talked about why he kind of broke out in 2021. Was it real? Is there some luck in there? So if you haven't, go back and check that out. But just kind of the basis of it was, yes, there was some luck, but there was also signs pointing towards a breakout. Even in 2020, hitting the ball hard, good average exit velocity numbers, good, barrel hard hit rates and barrel percentage as well. So, there were signs of that coming, definitely being a better player than what he had proven to be, at least in the second half of 2019 and 2020. I would take the over here on 3.1 WAR, though. And, I do see some regression. Again, like I talked about in that podcast, I think there has to be a little bit of progression. Riley was an MVP candidate. I think should have finished higher than 7th in that MVP voting. But I think it's because of the defense, especially if you leave him at third. It's why I'm not on board with the plan of moving him to first and finding a third baseman should Freddie Freeman move on somewhere, or the Braves move on from Freddie Freeman. I would leave him at third because his defense in the second half and in the postseason as well. I talk about that play in Game 4, and I think Game 4 is the biggest game in that series. But he made a play in the middle of that game that saved a run, and who knows what would have happened. Snicker maybe doesn't go to Tyler Matzik in those middle innings if the Astros put up another run there. So to me, that changed a lot in that game, and I think that game changed everything in that series. I think he's going to have higher than 3.1 WAR just because I think he's going to have better defensive numbers this year. If he plays defense like he did in the second half of 2021, he does that for an entire season. And again, I don't always understand the defensive metrics, but I know, at least from my eyes and what I see, that's a really good defensive player. So I think for that reason alone, he's going to go over 3.1 WAR. I still think he's going to be, an all-star caliber type offensive performer. So I'm going to go over on 3.1 WAR for Austin Riley. Next is Dansby Swanson. They have him projected as OPS plus of 95, which is below, league average, which is at 100. I'm going to go over on this as well. I think Dansby Swanson's in for a really big year, if not at least just a really good year. He had OPS plus of 97 and 111 the last 2 years, so he's beaten that total the last 2 seasons. And I think Dansby's a player, and we've seen it in the past, who plays well under pressure. I mean, we saw it in the postseason at times. We've seen it late in games in the regular season. I think he thrives off those pressure moments. And going into a contract season, which is essentially what it is in his last year of arbitration, I think Dansby Swanson's going to thrive under that pressure. I think he's going to have a really, good year, hit 260, 270, 25, 30 homers again. OPS around 780, 800. And I think he's going to have an OPS plus over 100. I think it's going to be back around, 110, 105, 110. So I'd take the over on that as well with Dansby's OPS plus. And the last player projection over under I want to do here was on Marcell Ozuna. They have him projected with a 797 OPS. They only project him getting 373 at bats, which I thought was a little strange, especially with the DH coming in. I think he'll get plenty of at bats, and they have him getting 19 home runs in those at bats. He had an 800 OPS in 2019 and a 1067 OPS in 2020. So he's beat their projected total the last 2 years. Look, Ozuna's a question mark. Like him or not, I'm beginning to lean he's going to be part of the Braves in 2022, and I think he's going to be their primary DH, as I wrote about over on TomahawkTake.com the other day. And again, I don't know how he's going to perform. Look, you look at his Dominican League numbers, and they're great, and I understand that, but he wasn't great to begin 2021. Small sample size, understand that as well. I don't know. This is a tough one for me. I'm going to go under. I think he's going to be more around a 780 OPS plus, but I could look really, really dumb in saying that because him moving to the DH strictly, I mean, that could potentially boost his performance as well, only having to worry about the offensive side of things. So I could see him blasting over that number. I just think he's a big question mark right now. Obviously, a year older, hasn't really played competitive baseball a lot in the past 2 years with the shortened season, and then only playing, a month and a half last year. I'm going to take the under here. Again, I think he's probably more 780, 790-ish OPS wise. But again, being the DH only, that could potentially help him a little bit there to get over that projected number. Some other notes on the offense projection wise, they only have Travis d'Arnaud getting 268 at bats because of his injury history, and that's very possible. I mean, look at last year. Didn't play a lot last year. He's had issues staying on the field in the past, so I think that's a fair projection for him. But the reason why I wanted to mention that is because they're pretty high on Contreras. They have him hitting 250 with double digit home runs. So I think he could get a lot of playing time if TDA is out. And they're pretty high on Shea Langoliers as well. I don't think we would see him until later in the season if TDA is injured at that point. But they have Contreras, finishing with even better numbers than TDA. They also include him as part of the DH discussion as well, which I think could be a possibility. But I also would, I would like to see him continue to develop as a catcher as well, because that's where he needs to grow the most. But I could see Contreras getting some starts at the DH position with his bat, because I think he will hit at the big league level. They have Langoliers with 17 home runs if he gets 356 major league at bats, but just with a 233 average and 883 OPS plus. So they do like his power numbers. They think that's going to play as well. But just interesting there on the catcher position. I think could see a lot of movement there. Again, with TDA's injury history, he may only get 250, 300 at bats in the regular season, which means you're going to need Manny Pena and Contreras and possibly Langoliers to step up there. The projections aren't really high on Pache and Waters contributing much this year, which I can understand that. They have Duvall repeating what he did last year with low average numbers, but high home run and RBI totals, which could very well see that happening again. So the projections for the offensive players. Let me know your thoughts on the over-unders for some of those numbers in the comments below on Twitter, on YouTube, or on Twitter as well. This is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to my resolution to eat right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I'm actually enjoying eating them. And have you tried their puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. The yummy cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all so good. And these are going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, including those puffs. 100% real chocolate. Low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bar with these. They are better. A typical candy bar can be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away by what you see there with high protein, low calories, high fiber, low carb Built Bars. Most Built Bars only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. They have tons of great flavors out there from mint brownie, coconut almond, and they have new flavors coming out all the time. Right now, they have the white chocolate cookies and cream, which is amazing. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. This episode is also brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly imitating questions and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket where you can do that yourself. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or new car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. All right, moving to the pitchers for the ZiPS projections. ZiPS projections are very high on the Braves pitchers for 2022, the rotation and the bullpen. In fact, Dan Szymborski said in his article on the Braves, he said, unlike most teams, the Braves would probably be just fine if they didn't sign a single additional pitcher this offseason. Now, I've gone on record and saying I think they need to add some depth to the rotation and possibly to the back of the bullpen as well. But, very glaring remarks for this Braves pitching staff. That's just how confident the projections are in this pitching staff. And I can understand that. I mean, this pitching staff was amazing in the postseason, starters and bullpen. So you hope they carry that momentum into 2022. So a couple of over and unders for the Braves starting rotation. They have Ian Anderson at 39.7 innings in 2022. Now, obviously, he came up during the 2020 shortened season, so didn't throw a lot of innings there. He only threw 128.1 innings last year during the regular season, but then did throw 17 additional innings in the postseason as well. So I'm going to take the over here for Ian Anderson. I think this is the year we see him throw 100 and 150, 160 innings. Would love to see him get up to around 175. Again, a lot depends on lockout, when the season starts, how much time starting pitchers get to prepare for the season. But I would love to see him get up to 160, 170 innings. And I think he does that in 2022. They also have Charlie Morton at 186 strikeouts. Now, he's had over 200 strikeouts in his last 3 full seasons, and it makes you really want to take the over here. I'm going to take the under on 186 strikeouts for Charlie Morton. A couple of reasons for this. One being, I don't know what he's going to look like to start the season. Again, this is another one like Acuna. We don't have much update here. Team doctors aren't able to evaluate him right now. but I don't know how much he'll be ready to go when the season starts. But even more so than that, I think the Braves will be highly cautious with Charlie Morton this year. They're paying him $20 million. He's getting up there in age, and he's somebody they want for the postseason. So I think they'll be a little bit more cautious with him, especially early in the year. And again, depending on how this lockout and possibly strike, how long that goes on, I think they'll be very cautious with Charlie. Try to limit him, during the regular season a little bit. Make sure he's there for the postseason, because that's when you want a guy like Charlie Morton fresh and ready to go. So it's not that I think his K percentage or K per nine is going to go down at all. I just think because of what he's coming off of and what the Braves really need him for, I don't think he's going to get the innings to pass that 186 total, which, again, is low. Like I said, he's been over 200 in his last 3 full seasons. So, he could very well get over 186. I just don't think he's going to get the innings to do it. That's the main reason I'm taking the under there. They have Max Fried at a 3.24 ERA, and he's beat that total the last 2 years at 3.04 and 2.25. This is a really good number here. I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna say he's 315 to 320 ERA. I'm gonna say he's gonna go under that total. Really excited for Max Fried. I hope he has a big year in 2022. Hope he gets some serious Cy Young consideration. So I'm going to take the under on Max Fried. I think he's going to be around 3.15, 3.20. So I think he comes just in under that 3.24 total. That's a very good number for Max Fried. And one interesting thing here, they have Huascar Ynoa projected for 104.3 innings. Zimborski's saying in his article that he's projected to be one of the best 4th starters in all of baseball. I think they have him projected with an ERA just over 4. This is interesting to me because I have not really been considering Ynoa for the rotation, at least long term. I think he'll get a shot there during spring training because I think there will possibly be 2 spots open, and he deserves a spot, or at least a chance to be in the rotation with what he did last year. I mean, look, he had a 10 to 12 start run where he was really good, so he deserves another shot, at the rotation. I just tend to think, with his 2-pitch mix, he's more so going to be destined for the bullpen or some sort of, multi-inning reliever role. I think you could see him being a Josh Hader type where he pitches a 7th and 8th inning or 6th and 7th inning and bridges that gap, which is becoming a very important part of a team and a bullpen right now. So again, it's not like I think is a bad pitcher. I just wonder how long he can really succeed as a starter with 2 primary pitches like that. So very interesting projections there for Ynoa. They're very high on him. And then they have Kyle Wright. I'm going to take the under on 104.3 innings pitched for Ynoa. Again, I think he ends up in the bullpen at some point in 2022 for the Braves. So I'm going to take the under on 104.3 innings for Huascar Ynoa. And then Kyle Wright, they have him with a 4.58 ERA. I would actually be okay with that with Kyle Wright as long as his starts are consistent and he's not, going out there and giving up 8 runs, every other start. I want to just see more consistency from Kyle Wright. I think 4.5 ERA, I would take that as your 4th or 5th starter. Certainly would take that from him. But main thing with Kyle Wright, I just want to see more consistent starts. Can't be going out there and getting pulled after 3 or 3 1/3 or 4 innings and giving up 6 or 7 runs. Got to be more consistent. And I think that comes. I'm very high on Kyle Wright. I think he's going to have a big year. I would take the under here. I think he's going to be more around 4.4, 4.5 if he does get to stick in the rotation. And then some notes on the bullpen. They have Matzik, Minter, Smith, and Luke Jackson all projected with ERAs under 4, with Matzik the best at 3.12. Will Smith projected to have the higher strikeout percentage. It's just a smidge better than what Kyle Matzik is projected at. And they project Minter with a walk percentage of just 8.9. It was 9% last year, but he was over 10% the 2 seasons before that. If Minter keeps that walk percentage down at that rate, I think he's going to have a big year. I think he could potentially get a look at the closer position if something were to happen to Will Smith. But I would love to see him continue to keep that walk rate down, something that's obviously really plagued him in the past. So they have him projected at under 9%, which would be huge for Minter and his progress in the bullpen. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game with the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, lastly, just wanted to quickly look at the projected win total. And I saw this tweeted out from Talking Baseball, part of John Boy Media, but I didn't really find it on the Fangraphs page anywhere. But they had projected win total for the Braves at 90 and had them winning first place in the NL East. It's kind of crazy that they have that, considering these are projections without Freddie Freeman on the team. And considering they've been so low on the Braves the past several years now, I think a big part of this is that pitching staff, which I think the Braves go into 2022 with a really strong pitching staff, top to bottom. I think they're very deep in the rotation. Certainly some question marks at the back end, but I think they have several candidates that could step up and fill those roles. The bullpen obviously looking very good coming off what they did in the postseason. Hopefully that can continue over the regular season. But I thought 90 wins was a bit high, considering the NL East will probably be at least fairly competitive again. The Mets are going to be competitive. Phillies will try to be competitive, and I think they got some offseason moves left to do. I think the Marlins are going to continue to be get better and be a pest in that division. I think the Nationals are clearly the worst team, trending in the bad direction, but still have some really good players on that team when healthy. So I think the NL East will still be somewhat of a dogfight. I think you'll have 2 or 3 teams there battling it out, and probably the Mets, Braves, and Phillies. So I thought 90 was a bit high, again, considering you don't have Freeman as part of these projections. And Freeman himself can be a 4, 5, 6 win swing, whether you have him or don't have him. So again, I'm fine with that. I'd probably put them more around 85 to 88 wins right now without Freeman. And then with Freeman, I'd say, anywhere from 92 to 95 wins. I think he makes that big of a difference on your team. If they go out and get Matt Olson, as a backup plan there, I still think I'd project him, 90, 92 wins. Whether or not that's good enough to win the NL East, we'll have to see. But I thought that was a very, high projection. I wouldn't say high, but higher than probably what I would put it at right now, considering the offseason isn't complete. But the offseason is not complete for other teams as well. Although it's probably complete for the Mets, or at least I hope it is, with all the big moves that they've made so far. So I think that's a pretty fair total, I guess you could say, considering what else has happened in the NL East. Again, I think that could be higher once hopefully they get Freddie Freeman on board. But let me know your thoughts on all these projections. Let me know your over under on some of these numbers we went through, including the win total here. Where do you have the Braves with this current roster? Where do you have their win total at? But again, please let me know in the comments below your thoughts on some of these projections. Let me know on Twitter as well. But that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves, and you can follow me at Shortstop Ball. Also, please make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.